That was a quick like NASCAR tire change. I'm here with Mr. Ken Levine.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. Now, you didn't quite bring BioShock Infinite for us, but you did come to talk.
I did.
But just for folks at home, BioShock Infinite is here, and it's really cool. And we've told you about it a little bit in our preview. But we do want to bug you because the kids want to bug you. We've got questions coming in. But let's set some stuff up. Based on the preview we put up, there's a lot of folks wondering how the relationship is going to work between Booker and Elizabeth and Songbird, because that already seems a little unhealthy, let's say.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bit of Stockholm syndrome going on there. I think when we release the demo, and I'm not exactly sure the video of the demo, that'll be in the next few weeks. Yeah. We'll be releasing a bunch of videos that focus certain aspects, and we'll release the whole thing, what you guys saw.
Yeah.
People really get a sense of how that relationship between Booker and Elizabeth works. But in terms of the dynamic between Booker, Elizabeth, and the Songbird, what the Songbird wants is he wants to get Elizabeth back in her tower where she's been trapped since she was a little girl. And she wants to go out in the world and fulfill her destiny. What does any young person want? They want to go live life. And he's keeping her from that. And they have this very strange relationship because he's her jailer, but he was also her only companion growing up. He brought her books, and he brought her food, and he brought her everything. And he's all she knows. So he wants to get away, but she's also sort of drawn back. And that tension is very, very strange. In terms of when she leaves, the Songbird, this giant, like 30-foot tall bird creature, takes it very personally. And I think that's one thing that we've been getting a lot of response to, is that you have the scene between her and the Songbird that feels like a scene between an angry ex-boyfriend and a woman, but he's this 30-foot tall bird creature, and yet it somehow holds together.
Different strokes.
That's right,
Now, the questions are coming in. We got some basic ones. Nathan from Corpus Christi wants to know, what about weapon upgrades, like in the original BioShock?
We're going to have, the point of what we try to do with these demos is we try to open up the door a little bit more each time about the game. And so we've shown a few weapons, we've shown a few vigors, and we've shown a taste this time in the demo. You see there's a tiny moment where you try to get a sense of what the equivalent of the gene tonics was, how that system works. This is pretty different in Infinite. But we're not talking specifically about weapons and how they work yet, and how things might evolve there, but we will down the road.
All right. Sorry, Nathan, I tried. And let's see. And we've got questions about the environment as to how big Columbia is, because it's hard to tell. Because it's kind of a flotilla with a main blimp. Even I couldn't tell from what I've seen.
I think there's sort of two parts to that question, or at least I'll make two parts to that question.
Okay.
One is that in terms of how big the city is, it's a large city. We don't actually go and make maps of the whole thing. I've never done that with Rapture. I've never done that. I'm here to tell a story, and I'm not a absolute completist about knowing every detail ahead of time. I tend to focus on the things that matter to me in telling that story. So it's a city. It's big enough that it supports this conflict between the Vox Populi and the founders. But what's interesting in terms of size, I think, and when you compare to, I think you saw the sequence with the Skyline battle.
Yep. The
scale of the encounters you could have, and the spaces you have, these vistas you have, the vertical nature of them is like nothing you saw in a previous BioShock. I mean, it's like totally different scale. The demo starts off in an extremely traditional BioShock space.
Yep.
You're going through a store and it's dark and it's abandoned, you're searching for loot, so BioShock. And by the end, you're in this incredible vertical battle on these skylines. You're actually boarding a Zeppelin, a moving Zeppelin, that's an actual just part of the simulation that gets summoned in like those bots in BioShock 1 when the security alarm goes off, and you actually can get on the Skyline and actually get on board those things. So the sort of scale of the spaces you'll be encountering goes from very traditional BioShock to things you've never seen before in a BioShock game.
And as far as the Skyline system goes, is that throughout the city? So that is, at least functionally, a way to get around.
Yeah, I mean, the way it was designed is that it's essentially the freight system in Columbia. And what happens in wartime, whether it's the underground in London or the sewers in Stalingrad, people tend to find ways, especially the Vox Populi, who don't control the transportation, the main transportation system. they start using it to move troops around, to move their men around. And what's cool about it, the skyline in the demo, is you actually see how acrobatic they are when they move on the skyline. But there's also freight cars are still moving around, so there's a bunch of times where those come into play. It's still an active rail system in the city. So it's going to be, there are going to be parts of the city where they're quite dense, and parts of the city where they're somewhat dense, parts of the city where you won't see any skylines because the city doesn't, that area of the city doesn't need them. The same way you'll see transportation works in our world. You see heavy transportation, infrastructure some places, light and none in various places.
All right. Now, Morten from Denmark actually has a question that ties into one I had, which is how dynamic is the city going to be? Because from the stuff I've seen, you know, there's parts of the game where it's very quiet, like early in the demo where you're just kind of hanging out in this kind of abandoned area. But then I almost found it's creepier when there are people because they're so unpredictable.
Yep.
So what about atmosphere and like, am I going to have to be freaked out every step I take in the city?
You know, you see the demo is a real sort of, and we try to do this in the games themselves. So the demo is a part of the game. I'm sure it will change a bunch before we ship it, but it is actually the end of a level called Emporia. And that narrative is what happens, what you saw happens, what happens at the end of Emporia. But you see a progression where it starts off just Booker and Elizabeth, in sort of a deserted part of the town, and then they see these refugees. And Booker at any time could be taking out his gun and start shooting. And that's one of the sort of things we did in this game, is that you're trained as a shooter player. Every time you see a dude, you just start shooting him, which is totally counterintuitive to the real world, at least for, you know, sane people. You know, you don't just start shooting people when you see them. Maybe not, you know.
Depends on the circles of traveling, but sure, I'll buy that.
Depends on the part of town. You know, the hipster part of town, you take out the gun and start shooting. So, you know, what we were trying to do is we have to train the player to think before he shoots in the game, because, you know, sometimes any enemy could have can be custom designed for how they aggro on you, or any not just any enemy, any entity, how they aggro on you. Some guys, the moment they see you, will start shooting at you. Some will be, you don't know what's going to make them start shooting at you, and some of them won't start shooting at you. So you always have this feeling of like your hands on your gun. I think that's the tension you're talking about.
Yeah.
What should I do? What should I do? And the demo, there's actually no shooting in the demo. There could be if the player chose, but in the demo you saw, the shooting doesn't really start to about 2/3 of the way through the demo. But the tension, at least from what we tried to do, is there all throughout.
Super uncomfortable, so far so good. What we've got here is, so my last question, because I'm getting the buzz in my ear, which is actually good, is it's from Alex from Germany, and he wants to know how you keep the balance between telling something about BioShock Infinite and telling too much.
It's a really great question, Alex, because it's super, super hard. People ask us all the time, like, oh, we want to know this, we want to know that, and I have to say, I think I've had to say it to you before, where I'm like, look, I love to tell you that, but part of my job is to protect the story. Like if I had told people in BioShock 1 about Atlas, about Would You Kindly and all this stuff, the game would have really been damaged. So I try to find the balance between bringing people in enough so they sort of like, okay, I see what your goals are here. I see what you're trying to accomplish. I understand what you're trying to accomplish with Booker and Elizabeth. I understand what you're trying to accomplish with the Songbird and the Vox Populi. But I try to stop there. And that's really challenging, because look, if I could, you know, I love talking about the game, because it's what I do all day. It's our baby. And but I need to stop myself over and over again.
And that is a perfect place for us to stop you right here.
Thank you.
So thank you very much for coming by. We will be harassing you until we get the footage of the demo, which I'm telling you guys is really awesome.
Thank you, everybody.
And so thank you for coming by, and BioShock Infinite out next year.
Yeah.
And you don't have anything to say about that Vita game, do you?
We're working on it.
All right.
We're
bug you about
excited.
that too. All right, man. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ricardo.
Now, we're going to be right back with X-Men in just a second.